Lightbearers, Treasure in Fragile Vessels. Take 1, by Elliot Dillon. Gazer, Chapter 7. It was starting to turn night when Jeremiah left Brian's house. The streetlights were just coming on as he made his way home. Through the sounds of the oncoming darkness, he heard voices. For a moment, his heart stopped, as he thought it might belong to the bikers. But when he turned, he only saw a pair of females on an evening walk. As he continued, he noticed a movement in the corner of his eye and stopped. For a moment, he considered continuing on, but soon his curiosity got the better of him as he turned to see a grove of trees. In the center of the growth of trees hung the Vision, looking as bleak as ever with its wasteland background. The two were there, but now only the man was dressed in leather, as the woman had changed to another outfit. This fact didn't escape Jeremiah's notice, but he was more focused on the fact that neither was looking at him as they talked, facing each other. It was the first time he'd ever seen them not gazing in the direction of the portal. The memory of Brian's suggestion to touch the Vision flashed through his mind as he gazed into the other world. If it's not real, your hand will just go through it. His friend had a point. If he was just going crazy, what would be the harm in touching something that wasn't there? Stepping closer to the image, the two people inside continued to not notice him, as the girl seemed to be having a one-sided conversation with the man. Just before the portal, he came to a stop. Checking for a moment that no one else was around to call him out on his weird behavior, he lifted his hand and slowly moved it toward the shimmering Vision. As his fingers came into contact with the portal, it started to ripple out from his touch like water. Though he could not feel anything, his hand began to tingle as he pulled it away and stared at the image. Putting his hand back toward it, he became bolder as he started to push against the surface. As he did, he watched his hand become lit by the gray tinge that covered the other world. "This isn't real," breathed Jeremiah as he pushed his hand through up to his elbow. Transfixed by his hand, he didn't notice that the world had changed till he looked up to see the female standing right in front of him. With a crooked grin, she grabbed a hold of his hand, something that shocked him as he felt it to be as real as if she were, well, real. Before he could say anything or pull his arm back, she had gripped his arm with both of her hands and pulled him through. With a cry of panic, he felt himself fall as he was pulled forward into the other world. "Thanks a lot, Bri." Speaker, Chapter 10. His mother looked worried and his father upset when he brought a strange girl home. To them he must have looked like a little boy bringing home a stray cat, as he had once done when he was a child. "Who is this?" asked his mother with a forceful smile. "This is Jean. She doesn't really have anywhere to go at the moment, so I was hoping she could stay here." He could tell his dad was going to explode, but his mother caught him before he could, pulling him off to another room, as they discussed their son's behavior in not-so-hushed tones. "So is this her?" asked his brother, as he leaned in to whisper the question. "Don't tell Mom and Dad." Jean was still shivering from the cold, so while his parents discussed her fate, he took her up to his room where he got her a change of clothes. Looking like she wanted to say something, he handed her an old homework notebook and pen to write with. "You don't have to do this. You said the source was calling both of us. I still haven't made my decision, but I don't think it's right to let you be homeless while I think." "Mom and Dad are never going to let her stay," stated his brother who had followed them. Jean seemed to be listening to something, then turned to both boys as she wrote down, "The source must want me here." "Why do you say that?" asked Elijah. Before she could answer, his parents came up. "Sorry about that, Jean," stated his mother. "We would love to have you stay a few nights with us." "But in the basement," added his dad, as he cast Elijah an accusatory look. Using the paper, Jean thanked them for their hospitality, which got a confused look from both his parents. "You're welcome," replied his mother unsurely. While the woman got the girl some women's clothes to change into, Elijah's father stopped him to ask him some questions. "Why did you bring her here?" "It was the right thing to do. She had nowhere else to go." "You don't even know her." "I know her well enough to know she's someone I should help." "How can you know she's not some psycho that will kill us in our sleep?" "I don't completely know, but I trust she's not going to do that." His dad seemed ready to argue as he added, "Just like you trust that I wouldn't kill you when you let me into your family." "That was different. You were 7. Still, you didn't completely know what kind of life I had come from, or if I was a danger to myself or you. But you felt drawn to take me in. I feel the same way about her." His words softened the man's demeanor as he sighed heavily. "All right. But I want everyone to sleep with their doors locked tonight." Dad, if she wants us dead, a few locks aren't going to keep her from getting to us. His dad frowned at the older boy. Then keep that sword you love so much by your bed in case she comes in. His brother appeared ready to make a comment, which his father leapt on before he could. If you can't handle having company in the house, you can go stay at your friend Rick's house. This seemed to cool his brother's jets as he apologized. I'll behave. Elijah's mother came over to tell them she'd let Jean take a shower. I know it's late, but I think we should put something together for her to eat. She looks like she hasn't eaten a decent meal in days. While their mother prepared the food, Elijah and his brother got the bed in the basement ready. When they were done, they headed back up to find Jean sitting at the table. She looked content as she listened to his mother tell her stories about Elijah as a youth. As he sat down, she wrote a note. Your family is lovely. Thanks. While they talked, his brother grabbed a plate, then turned away as if he was going to leave the room. On seeing him heading out of the kitchen, his mother called after him, You get back in here, Devin. I will not have you spilling food. As he sat down across from them, Elijah could see the question forming in Jean's eyes, as she noted the several differences between Elijah and his family. Before she could ask, he told her, My family adopted me when I was 7. I had been in a foster home till then. They already had Devin at that point, but the source led them to me. At least, that's what they have always told me. Hearing his words, his mother smiled as she set down the plate of food in front of the girl. He did, and we thank the source every day we followed his leading. Jean gave him a meaningful look as if to say, See, following the source isn't all bad. Ignoring her, he asked his mother if she made enough for him. Didn't you eat with Fred? Yeah, but I could eat again. Letting out a forlorn sigh, the woman came back with a plate, which she had already prepared for him in anticipation of this. Thanks, Mom. After they finished eating, Elijah showed the girl to her sleeping quarters. I hope it's okay. She nodded. Noticing him lingering, she asked with her eyes, What's up? Did you lose your voice when your parents died? Is that what caused the trauma? His question seemed to tire her as she wrote down, Why won't you believe this is from the source? That I am a messenger with a special calling from him? I don't know. I guess I just thought the source was done using speakers and the like. She shook her head. The source even said he'd raise them up for the last days, to call the world to readiness for his coming. He will pour out his spirit, show wonders in heaven like blood and fire, before his coming. And everyone who calls on him will be saved, even among the remnant of the destruction. You really think it's the last days? Don't you? He shook his head. Sure, things are bad, and I wouldn't mind if the source came, but I doubt it's going to happen in our lifetime. Why don't you? Because we're supposed to have peace before he comes. Where do you read that? I don't know, that's just what I've heard. The book says the last days will be a terrible time. People will be lovers of self, of money, boastful, proud, abusive, lovers of pleasure rather than the source, saying they are followers of him but denying his power. Does that not sound like the people of today? Recalling the reasons he had left the sanctum, he couldn't help but agree it sounded familiar. But why do you think it is the last days? Because the source has told me. Then in a whisper that seemed to come from all around him, he heard a voice say, It is time we woke the world up, Elijah. Will you speak for me? The voice sent a chill running up his spine as he looked around for the source of the words. Looking back to Jean, he found her smiling as she wrote, Did you hear it? He nodded. What was that? That was your calling. It is time you made your decision. Holding out the paper to him, he saw she had again written the response, yes or no. Looking up at her, he could see by the look in her eyes that it was time he made his decision. Now was the time. But to speak? He stepped back as he shook his head. I can't. Why does the source even want me? I can't talk in front of a crowd of people. I can barely step to the front of the class to solve a math problem without passing out. I know it can be hard talking to strangers, but the source will give you strength. He shook his head. I'm sorry, Jean. I'm not like you. I can't face the ridicule. He was confused for a moment as her shoulders shook. Then he realized she was laughing. Seeing his confused look, she told him, I'm an introvert, Elijah. Maybe even more so than you. But as the speakers of old, the source has strengthened me. He will strengthen you as well. I know it seems hard, and sometimes confusing why he would choose someone with a fear of public speaking, but he chooses the weak things of the world to shame the strong, to remind them that it is not through their strength that they are able to conquer, but through his. He uses people like us because we know our flaws and our inabilities, and so we rely on him more. He works best with those who are able to rely completely on him because they realize their deficiencies. When I speak, I have nothing to boast about because I am compelled by the Spirit and realize it is only through His power that I am able to do the work. Thinking back to how she had been when he'd seen her speak in front of the people at the sanctum, he had a hard time believing she had been scared in the least, as he said, "If you have a hard time with speaking, why don't you just tell the source to get someone else?" I have tried in the past to not speak, but then I think of all He's done for me, and it is more impossible for me not to speak rather than to speak. The source has laid this work upon me, and to not do it would close me off from Him. And for me, the thought of being closed off from Him is a worse outcome than speaking in front of an auditorium of people. Imagining himself doing the same, he had a hard time deciding between which was worse. But as he looked into her eyes, he couldn't help but notice the peace in her expression. Even though she was technically homeless, and probably didn't have a penny to her name, she had placed herself completely in the source's hands, and that gave her peace that he didn't have, even with a roof over his head and money in his pocket. Though every part of him told him to stay away, he felt something step closer to her, as he said in a voice filled with pleading, "Teach me to trust like you." Dreamer, Chapter 7. The terrain ahead grew rougher as Ezekiel and the band of outcasts had to climb over large slabs of fallen rubble in order to get to where they were going. Along one section of concrete, he lost his footing and started to slide down toward a pit filled with rebar spikes, which poked up at him, waiting to impale him on their sharp ends. Just before he reached the dangerous steel bars, Noah slid past him, leaping away from the concrete at the end as she reached out for another section of concrete onto which she clung. Calling to him, she told him to do the same as she held out her hand to him. Unsure if he could do it, he decided he had no other option, as at the last minute he leapt out into the air. Time seemed to stand still for a moment as he hung there in space, waiting to fall down to his death. Before he felt Noah's hand grab his and pull him the rest of the way to the wall, which he grabbed onto like a drowning victim. Smiling proudly, she congratulated him on making it. "Come on, we're almost there." Pulling herself up, she let herself slide down on the other side of the structure, where she slid to the bottom, on which level ground grated her feet. "Are we never going to stop?" Struggling, he finally pulled himself over the edge as well and let himself slide down like a discarded doll down a trash chute to the waiting ground below. Once he was there, he lay there for a moment gazing up into the gray sky. Calling to him, Noah motioned for him to follow, which he reluctantly did as they made their way deeper into the city toward the dome building which was... Why couldn't he remember? To the west of the dome, he noticed a black cloud which grew darker as they drew closer to the dome. "We need to be extra careful around here," whispered Noah. "This area is too close to the castle." He didn't have to wonder long what she meant as they moved past a fallen building, which gave him a view of a sinister-looking structure. In the center of the section of dark clouds, a black castle that looked like something straight out of a futuristic Gothic novel floated above the ground. Attached to the castle's base was rock, and beneath it was a large hole, as if the kingdom had come up from beneath the ground. "That's Kuka's palace," explained Noah. When she realized he probably didn't know who that was, she corrected herself as she said, "The false ruler. They built it on sandy ground, and when its base fell away in an earthquake, it was left doing that." She motioned to it, indicating she was referring to the fact that it was floating. "We'll want to avoid going there if we can." Without even thinking about it, he mused aloud, "So that's the place Wheels tried to attack." On hearing the nickname, he heard her exhale in a soul-wrenching way before she answered, "Yes, it is." Turning away, she did not say more as they continued on their way to the dome. Along the way, they met a group of refugees who all had the same marks around their wrists that the group of children had worn. "What are those marks? Seth said something about chains?" "Chains bind everyone in this world." She displayed a thoughtful look, then added, "Save one." Lifting her own hand, she moved down her sleeve so that he could see a similar mark on her wrist. "But we've been freed, and I plan on remaining so." Pausing for a brief moment to talk with the refugees, he watched as she performed a strange task with one of them. With her sword in hand, the other person, an older woman, placed her hands on top of the blade as she spoke to her. Like a sword, the light divides, cutting away the darkness from the light. It corrects, trains in righteousness, and equips us for the work of the source. His word is forever and perfect, a shield for those who abide in him. It is right and true, and shows that the source is faithful in all he does. Do not lose hold of this light. It will guide you even in the darkest night, which is yet to come. The thought that things could get darker frightened Ezekiel, but did not seem to faze Noah as she smiled. When the woman had finished speaking, one of the broken pieces which had been dark before began to glow. After the exchange, they said their farewells as the group headed in the direction of the tracks. They'll probably meet up with the others, Noah mused as they continued toward the building. Looking back at the group, he wished for a moment that he was traveling with them. When he looked forward again, he saw Noah duck behind a fallen section of building as she motioned for him to do the same. Just as he did, he heard the sound of grunting. Peeking around his hiding spot, he watched as a group of rage masks led a group of people who were chained together through the dilapidated city. At the sight, he finally understood what they had all meant by being chained. The people looked miserable and groaned with each step as they cried out to the heavens for deliverance from their misery. Some had their eyes covered with blindfolds, and though they did not cry out for help, they looked as miserable as the others. "Who are they?" asked Ezekiel as he felt his heart ache in him at the sound of their groans. "They are the chained. Right now they are under the rule of Kuka, like the masks. But unlike the masks, they have not fully committed to following him and are still searching, still deciding whether to follow the light or the dark." Looking grim, she added, "But unless they choose the source, they will all end up being miserable, no matter what Kuka promises them. His promises are nothing but empty gilded vessels which carry you down to death and destruction. He is a murderer, and by following him you will become one too." Looking back at the group, he noticed how the rage masks did seem to look as miserable as the chained. Though they were dressed in fine clothing and wearing expensive shoes and watches, they looked as lost as the others. Behind one mask, a chain fell to the ground as if overcome with his grief. As the others gathered around him to try to comfort him and get him to stand again, the one on the ground cried out to the sky as if pleading for release. In answer to the people's cries for help, Noah leapt out of her hiding spot, kicking aside a rage mask as she removed her sword from its sheath, and in the same movement cut apart a section in the chain that was keeping the people from escaping. "Go!" called Noah. "Run!" Some did as she instructed, while most of those with blindfolds just continued to walk along in a line, as if they hadn't noticed they'd been freed. The rage masks sounded angry by her freeing their prisoners and turned their attention to the girl, who agilely dodged their swords while continuing to cut apart the chains that were keeping the people in prison. "Go, please!" shouted Noah as she pushed some of those who had not moved away, but they continued to follow the path the rage masks had set them on, not noticing that their chains had been broken as the links dragged across the ground. Turning her attention from them, Noah focused solely on the masks as she blocked one attack with her sword, then swung her body in close as she elbowed a rage in the side of the mask. As the one fell to the ground, another came up toward her. She dodged him by rolling between his legs, then came up behind him, kicking him in the back so they fell forward onto the ground. Another rage mask was kicked full in the face after she blocked his attack with her sword. When she had knocked the last of her attackers to the ground, she motioned for Ezekiel to come and follow her as she ran away from them before they regained their senses. "Why didn't you finish them off?" asked Ezekiel when he joined her. "What do you mean by that?" "They're just going to keep coming after us. You should end them so we don't have to worry about seeing them again." Shaking her head, she told him, "It is not my job to end lives. I just save them." Though he did not know why that prevented her from ending a few masks' existence, he did not press the issue as they continued through the rubble. After several more leagues of walking, they reached the dome, which looked exactly how he remembered it in his dream. Even the roof was caved on the same side and in the same pattern, but as he stared at it, he had a niggling feeling something was missing. But what? Noticing his confused look, she asked him what was wrong. "I don't know. I just feel like there should be something else here." "Would that be it?" Pointing up, he followed her finger to where a group of black dots were beginning to gather at the top of the structure. As he watched, he realized the dots were moving, not with a haphazard movement like trash, but with a thought-out movement like some living organism. Pulling out a pair of binoculars, Noah handed them to him first, as she let him take a closer look at the blackness. As soon as he focused in on the objects, he remembered his dream as the binoculars slipped from his grasp. Night marchers. Catching the binoculars before they hit the ground, Noah raised them to her own eyes as she gazed at the terrible creatures. "You're right, a whole lot of them. Guess we should get moving before they see—" She stopped, and he looked at her as she lowered the binoculars. Too late. Remembering from the dream how one had spotted him, he guessed that was what had happened, as there was a sudden sound like a great wind. Looking back to the building, the grayness of the sky looked suddenly darker as a great gathering of night marchers poured out of the hole in the building and started toward them. "I suggest we run," said Noah with a coolness that annoyed him. Following the suggestion, they both turned, heading back to the building they'd passed, which had a hole in its wall. Neither slowed as they raced through the structure, leaping over fallen rubble, even as the sound of beating wings drew closer. "We're never going to make it," groaned Ezekiel as they both slid under an elongated metal box. Dust and scattered papers flew up around them as they sped around a corner, then slammed through a wooden door which burst apart from the impact of their bodies going through. "A dead end," stated Noah as they stopped to catch their breath in a small room. Metal sheets lined a section of the wall through which he spotted white seats with holes in the middle. "Wait, is this a bathroom?" "It's okay. No one will care if you're in the ladies' bathroom right now. That's not what I was concerned about." "You're right." Walking over to the wall, she started to kick at it with the heel of her boot, putting a dent in it as she proceeded to make the dent larger. Remembering how easily her sword had cut through the thick metal chains on the prisoners, he asked, "Why don't you just cut down the wall with your sword?" Continuing her work, she answered him by saying, "It's not that kind of sword." "What do you mean? It only cuts through one thing. Metal?" "No, darkness." Not understanding what she meant, he didn't have time to ask as he heard the sound of the night marchers as they entered the building, making a ruckus as they started to tear the place apart. Just as their sounds drew close enough so that he could hear the night marchers' claws clicking on the tiles, Noah finished expanding the hole. It was large enough for one to squeeze through, and she forced him through first, following closely behind as they ended up in another bathroom with urinals on the wall. "Feel better now?" asked Noah with a wink that made him cast her a not amused look. Out through the door of the room, they started to run as they made their way through the other side of the building and out onto the street again. Once there, they ran with full speed toward an arch, which was positioned over a set of stairs that led down into the darkness again. At the top, he stopped, hesitating as he looked down into the inky stillness. "Which do you prefer?" asked Noah as she waited at the bottom, "the dark or night marchers?" Hearing the sound of the creatures screaming, he made up his mind as he hurried down after her. Pulling out her flashlight, she lit the area directly in front of them as they started to run again. Just when his eyes had gotten acclimated to the light and his heart was left racing only from the running, they spotted an opening up ahead. Up another set of stairs, they came out at the edge of the city where it met a forest of greenery. Immediately, he remembered the forest as he stepped toward the trees. "You remember this?" He nodded as he pushed the brush aside. Together they made their way through the natural structure of trees till they reached the pond he remembered seeing just before he'd awoken. Remembering slightly what came next, he stared at the pond, not wanting to look into its clear surface. "What's wrong? Does something happen here?" "I don't know. I woke up at this point." Taking in a breath, he forced himself forward as he stopped at the pond's edge. In its reflection, he only saw himself dressed in the ridiculous garb Noah had forced him to wear. Why did he ever let her talk him into putting these clothes on? Before he could say anything to admonish her, they heard the sound of branches breaking and turned just as a group of rage masks entered the clearing. Turning the other direction, they found another group of masks. They were surrounded and beyond outnumbered. Speaker, Chapter 11. Many say they believe in the source, but to believe means to trust, and you can't trust someone unless you know them. Even the false ruler believes in the source. But we must have more than just a knowledge that he exists. We must have a relationship that brings trust in him, that he will take care of us no matter what. Elijah looked up from the words Jean had written. "But how do you come to know the source? He's not really someone you can talk to like we are now." "But he is. Prayer is the way we talk to him, and the Book of Light is how he talks to us. He has also given us the Temple of Time, in which we can spend time with him getting to know him." "What's the Temple of Time?" "It is the forgotten day, the golden tablet that people try to make void. Contrary to what some teach, keeping this tablet does not make us legalistic, but is something we do to show that the source has redeemed us and that we have accepted his gift of sanctification. It is the source that sanctifies his people, just as he created the world for them. They do not sanctify themselves any more than they create themselves. This time is made for us to remind us that he is our creator, that he is our redeemer. He has set it aside for this purpose, for this reminder, and so that when we remember, we can again be sanctified. Sanctification is a gift of love, because our growth in holiness comes with a growth in love. The time is a celebration of love, and something we do in order to spend time with him, getting to know him better. While we spend time with him, we learn about him through his book. The book contains a history of our world, which shows us what he's like. In it, we see his love through his plan to save us through his Son, the Word. I thought the Word came to make the source love us. She shook her head adamantly. No, the source loved us long before the Word ever took human form. It was both of them that came up with the plan of salvation. For the source so loved the world, he gave his Son. The source loved us. He loved us even while we were still in the darkness, and he is still working through his Spirit and the Word to bring us to him. And we can see this most clearly in the Book of Light, where the story of the source and the Word are told. Reaching to her side, she picked up his family's Bible, as she turned the pages to a section near the back. Pointing to a verse, she wrote on her pad, "The Word told us to abide in him. Do you know what that means?" Elijah shook his head. To abide means to remain. As we remain in Him, keeping our eyes fixed on His, we will grow in our relationship with Him. If you are going to believe in the source and His Son, you need to abide in them. This is especially important for us to do in this time. It is from them alone we can receive the strength we need to remain strong. Soon enough, we will start facing persecution for our faith. But even with the threat of death, we must continue to faithfully give the warnings and to seek the source and Him alone for our strength and guidance. We start this work because we felt the source leading us, felt the compulsion to speak. We did not think of the consequences except for the souls that would be lost if we did not deliver the words of light. Our needs did not matter, nor the world's view of us. Elijah looked up from the words Jean had written. Who is this we? Fellow speakers and spreaders of the light, Lightbearers. Some of us will work alone, but others will have companions. But in the end we will be left to consider our own course, to wonder if it would have been better for us if we had never taken the path set before us. The false ruler will send his forces against us to deter us from our path, and the work we have to do will seem too hard to accomplish. We may even face destruction, and the zeal with which we first preached may dissipate, but we cannot turn back. It is during these times of discouragement that we will turn to the source for our strength. He will remind us that the words we have spoken up till then have not been our own, but the ones He has given us. With His light filling our hearts, we cannot help but to proclaim His message. From the look in her eyes as she wrote out the message, Elijah wondered if these words weren't written from her own experience. He wanted to ask her about it, but as it was almost time for school, he left with the thoughts of persecution and hardships filling his mind, and the wonderment at what he had actually gotten himself into. "You should have heard him," stated Fred. Elijah wasn't sure what he was talking about till the teen mentioned the Light Sanctum speaker's name. "Pastor Reeves gave a really good talk last night. You should have heard him. He really knows what he's talking about." Hearing this, Elijah couldn't help but frown, a fact his friend noticed as he asked him what was wrong. "It's just that I don't agree with what Reeves says. He says that we aren't saved by keeping the tablets. I agree with that, but that doesn't make them null and void. We don't keep the tablets so we will be saved, but because we are saved." "What? Do we keep them because we think by obeying them we will be saved? Or because we have let Him work in our lives to change us, so that without even thinking about it we obey them? You sound like that crazy broad that spoke of the sanctum. You know, I heard she came around a second time, but the parishioners kicked her out." At his words, Elijah remembered the bruise he had seen on Jean's wrist. When he'd asked her about it, she'd written, "Not everyone who calls on the name of the source will enter the kingdom, but those who do His will. I pray that you will do His will, Elijah. He that knows Him will walk as He did, and He walked in the tablets and lived by the word. Follow the word's example and not man's. They say it is legalism to follow the tablets, but it is presumption to say we are released from the obedience to them, for they are the source's will. We should delight to know and do His will as He has commanded. If you want to be righteous, you need only to look to Him in His holy tablets, which will show you the way. Those who live apart from the tablets will never attain the life the source wants for them." "You should have heard the things she was spouting," continued Fred, not having noticed his friend's mind had wandered for a time. "I was actually there that time." He smiled as if the fact pleased him. "I wish you had been." "What things was she saying?" "Things like that if the tablets are written in the heart they cannot help but shape our lives, and that obedience, or the service of love, is the sure sign of a growing and prospering relationship with the source." And the people objected to these words? Of course! Everyone knows we only need faith. Salvation is a free gift from the source through faith. "I agree with that, but it comes by obedience. To not obey is to be in darkness, and those in darkness have not seen Him nor know Him. If we abide in Him, His love will dwell in us, and our feelings, thoughts, purposes, and actions will be in harmony with His will, which is shown in the tablets." Fred looked unhappy as he said, "If that's the case, then why would I need faith? Faith allows us to take a hold of the source's grace, which enables us to be obedient to Him. Obedience, faith, and grace are all gifts from Him, and are all something He will give us if we let Him into our life. Obedience to Him is a fruit that shows we are of the light. To not keep His tablets is to be in darkness, and if we say we are not, we are dark ones. As His love is manifested in us, we will just keep His commands without giving it a second thought. You know, you're always getting on to me for getting all my information from the preacher, but what about you? You sound like you were quoting her word for word. Were you there too?" Elijah ignored the accusation as he said, "I may sound like her, but not because I am quoting her, but because that is what the book says. I've warned you against relying on man, because you need to study the book for yourself, to make sure that what they are saying is in line with its words. This Pastor Reeves is teaching that the word has released us from the tablets. He even goes so far as to make the source's commands out to be some kind of burden, but they are an expression of His nature and the embodiment of His love. They are the foundation of His government. In fact, if you substitute the word tablet in the book with love, then you will better see what the source is asking us to do. If you love me, keep my love. That is, show my love to others. Darkness is transgression of love, living apart from his love, living with no love for others. Darkness is living outside of the love we have been shown through the Word. If we are really growing into his likeness, if his love is manifest in our souls, his tablets will be carried out in our lives. And when that principle of love is in our heart, we will be renewed in the image of our Creator, and the new covenant of writing his words on our heart will be fulfilled. Obedience is not an outward show of compliance, but a service of love. I can't believe you. You were just telling me a few weeks ago how restricted the life of light is, and now you are telling me you want to make it more restrictive? I'm living in the source and I don't feel any such compulsions. When was the last time you read the book for yourself, though you prayed to the source for longer than a minute? You're judging me. That's not my intent. I just want you to think about it. The source calls for us to come to him and to learn of him for ourselves. You can't learn of someone if you don't spend time with him. If you are just getting all your information about them secondhand, your knowledge of them isn't going to be as strong, and your relationship isn't going to be real. His words upset his friend as he glared at him, and as he did, the half-mask flashed across his face for a moment, making Elijah's heart ache. Now you think you're better than me because you spend more time reading the book? Who went and made you judge? I just know that a lot of people don't read the book and haven't seen for themselves that it is a revelation of the source's love and power. Because they don't know his love on a personal basis, when people come to ask them if the source is real, they have no way of witnessing. They have no knowledge to share except from others, and nothing is more powerful than a personal witness. When you don't have a personal relationship with the source in the Word, you run the danger of not thinking you can take the Bible literally, and this can lead you to limiting the power of the source. That is why there are people out there who do not think the source is the creator of all, because people have dismissed the fundamental light of the book, and now it is thought by many to be outdated. You are outdated, snapped Fred. I can't believe I'm hearing this from you. We both agree the stories in the book aren't realistic, and now you're telling me you believe them all? I have studied them for myself, and I can't help but feel a greater power at work in my life since doing so. And that power I felt tells me they are light. I know some of it is hard to accept, but faith has helped me take hold of his promises and see that he is as powerful as he says. The source does not ask us to believe without giving us evidence for our faith, but he does not provide absolute certainty because he wants us to step out in faith. But he never asks us to step out in blind faith. Even the teachers of today don't all agree on everything the book says. Many of them say it's just a collection of fables given to teach us how to live a moral life. That's because they haven't opened their hearts and minds to the light. If they did, they would see that it's all beams of light from the throne of the source, given so we might know him better and thus grow in our faith in him. The look in his friend's eyes told him he wasn't up for the message quite yet, and even the next day he did not seem keen on listening. Instead, he confronted Elijah with the teachings of Pastor Reeves. But no matter how many passages the pastor gave Fred to try to prove him wrong, Elijah had decided. No matter what liquid they poured on the physical tablets, they never melt away the ones he had placed in his heart. Of that he was sure.